So, talk a little bit about the University of Minnesota's efforts in West Central Minnesota. I'm actually part of the West Central Research and Outreach Center. We're an agriculture experiment station. We started up in 1911, so we've been around for a while. Our focus is mostly on agriculture research. Back in 2001, farm economy was struggling, rural communities were struggling. We had a new director at our organization, and he was looking around, asking himself and asking others the question, what can we do for our communities, our farmers, our constituents, and people in the rural Minnesota just in general. And it might sound strange that an agriculture research station would decide to focus on renewable energy, but the way he looked at it was that farmers have the land resource, and farmers grow things like biomass and corn, and so we should start working in renewable energy. We did have some history. Our facility housed one of the first corn ethanol pilot plants in the state before the ethanol industry took off, but that basically was shuttered, and that work went away. So in 2001, we started working in renewable energy, and our focus was on community-scale renewable energy systems. We worked very closely with our sister campus, University of Minnesota Morris. Now I'm going to talk about the university's work, and I might say they and we, and so that's kind of internal. We're all the University of Minnesota. We report to the St. Paul campus, College of Food, Agriculture, Natural Resource Sciences, and they have another reporting line than we do. A few years ago, this really started at the University of Minnesota Morris campus. Started looking at how could the campus be more sustainable, be a carbon neutral campus, produce as much energy as they can consume using renewable resources. So from that came what people in that first organizing group called the Morris Model. And the Morris Model worked on various projects. We brought in, I joined, we brought in the city and county and school, and we just did that for a few years and won some great awards. We did things like Green Step Cities. We helped start the Green Corps program in the state, but in many respects we weren't making the progress that we really had hoped, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So what is the Morris Model at this point? It's a loosely knit group of organizations and stakeholders within Morris and Stevens County. And we look to advance goals in areas of energy, transportation, waste reduction, and improved recycling, and then education. So this should be the end slide, but I'm going to give you what has happened right up front. We participated in a program called Morris Community or Climate Smart Municipality program. And back in October 2018, we had a retreat, various stakeholders within our community. We went to Camp Ripley. We wanted to get out of the community, have people focus just on these issues I talked about. And so we had a 2-day retreat talking about goals and projects. And this involved the university, the city council, the county commissioners and the county board, the high school, and various businesses in the county. So we had very good representation. From that, we developed Morris Community Climate Smart Municipality Strategic Plan. And so we had goals, again, in energy, transportation, waste reduction, recycling, and education. And so we were just a strategic planning group. We didn't really have any ties to say each organization has to do this. So we developed overall goals. We talked about organizational goals that various people within that group could take back and have their leadership ratify. And that's where we're at right now. We're getting ratification of the strategic plan. City Council has ratified the plan. The university has ratified the plan. There's some other individual organizations that have ratified the plan. We're still working on our county, and we're still looking at the school. And they've told us they're generally in favor of it. It takes them a while to act, so, and it has. We developed a project list, so a suite of projects that we're going to work on. I'll talk a little bit about that later. And then, you know what it really boils down to is people like yourselves stepping up and providing leadership, because these things don't go anyplace without people being active and taking leadership. So this is what the Morse Model team has done. We've conducted educational events such as EV showcases. We have an upcoming camp for Morse students to go to Germany. I'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. We've advocated for renewable energy systems such as solar PV for the high school. One of our Morse Model team members and someone that works in our program also coaches the robotics team. So he did a project where was able to put a solar PV system on the school. The revenue that comes from that goes to the robotics program. And so that's been well received within the school and the community. We also advocated for a $30 million biogas upgrade plant for 3 local dairies and a developer to build in Stevens County. Now, I think the county commissioners were very surprised when the University of Minnesota, the city council, came to advocate for this, because it's a farm group, and many times you don't get that much support for probably just not willing to take our time off and go to a council or a commissioners meeting and say, yeah, this is important for our community. So I think they were surprised that they had such a good turnout and people supporting this upgrade plant. And then we're going to announce very soon that December in the Stevens County area is going to be E85 month. And so we're going to do an E85 challenge. And we're going to educate people about E85. The ethanol overall hasn't been, I would say, extremely well received, but from our standpoint, the energy balance is still positive. It's a clean, renewable fuel. It's local. And I think I'm going to talk a little bit here about it next. So we have a local ethanol plant, Denko 2. It is a very good renewable fuel story. Corn is processed from local farmers in Morris, around Morris. E85 is mixed at the plant and delivered directly to the gas stations. So if you think about that, the corn 4 or 5 miles out of town, it's brought into the ethanol plant. They make E85, they deliver it maybe a mile away to the fueling station, pull up, and you can put E85 in your pickup or your car, or you could use a blender pump to put E15 in, or some put E30 and E50. I got to be careful about what I say with E30 and E50, because if you don't have a flex fuel vehicle, it's illegal to put anything greater than E15 in. But there's many people that do, and they actually like E30 and E50. They get very good performance in that. So, and again, all that money stays in our local community, and there's many reasons to do work like this. There's environmental, climate, but there's also, from our standpoint, economic developments. And one of our primary legs of the stool is to generate wealth and economic development in our communities. And I often look at Rochester area and see the growth that they have and what the medical industry has done for Rochester. And I think in many aspects, other rural communities are asking themselves, what can we do to have at least a part of that, piece of that? And it's not necessarily about growing 30% every year in population. It's about being able to keep young people that grow up in the community, attracting some new people into the community as well.
I'm sorry, if I ask a question about ethanol?
Yeah.
Can we go back?
Sure.
So a couple of things. One, my understanding is the production of ethanol is very water intensive. Water is a finite resource.
Yes.
So I have a concern about that. Number two, soil is incredibly important when you look at climate change. And my particular opinion is planting every available acre with soy or corn is not necessarily healthy for our environment regarding degradation of our water. We could due to that agricultural production, the lack of other crops that could be grown that would be healthier for the soil, carbon sequestration. I just have a real problem with ethanol.
That wasn't a question, by the way.
Yeah, well, it is, and that, how did you decide?
How would you respond to that? I mean, yeah, you're looking at community and you're saying it's important for our economy, but there are a lot of other things that
absolutely
could make your economy more
So
viable other than this.
I would respond by saying you're absolutely right. However, what energy source can you tell me that's perfect? And that's where we're at. Transportation fuels are always the most challenging. It's one thing to be plugged into a grid, but if you're going to take that energy and move something, it has to be transportable. And we're getting to electric vehicles now, but there's been a lot of progress, and there continues to be a lot of progress. One of our focus areas and our goals is to reduce fossil energy consumption and production agriculture. And so we continue to make progress, but this is our goal. This is where we're at right now, and we have to take incremental steps. And I see E85 as an incremental step. To your soil comment, yes, we need to be more careful about releasing carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, tearing up our soils. I think farmers are moving more towards minimum tillage and no-till to avoid that. Unfortunately, corn production is a reality right now based on policy. Farmers and local communities don't have much to say about the policy, federal policy, state policy, in regards to corn production. If there was another economical crop right now that limited risk, because specialty crops are risky, and insurance programs that supported those, farmers would most likely go in that direction, and then we get closer to what you're saying.
Can I ask a clarification question? You've got the 1530, not 50 and 85. Statewide, the gasoline is still blended at 10%, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you said that we're not allowed to put more than 15% in our cars if it's not
Yes,
flex fuels?
that's correct.
Thank you.
And so they're blended, they call them blender pumps. So you pull up to the pump and they actually provide E85, but then they're blended with other gasoline. So no, you have, I'm sorry you have a very good point. I just, it seems like, just like everything in life, there's very few things that are perfect, and we try to work our way to that. We're not there yet, and this is another possibility. There's a question back here.
So, yeah, I have one question. So let's say if you didn't make ethanol, right? The farmer grows those crops. Where do they end up to?
Where do they go to?
Yeah.
Well, corn is usually used as livestock feed. Most of the corn goes to livestock feed, so pork production, beef production, dairy production, poultry production.
Anything left will decompose, right?
Yes.
During the decompose process, they also release the carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
So do you have net loss if you convert to the ethanol? If not, why we need to even have the process?
Well, when you use ethanol, we're talking about the corn grain in this case. So you still have the material that's degrading. But, if it wasn't corn, there'd be other materials there, other grasses, whatever, and that would be degrading as well. So we're getting into a broader discussion, and we can certainly have that discussion. Perhaps we could wait until we get through the presentation, unless there was one other question. I thought I saw one.
No, I was just going to say that I thought I had read that the process of creating, producing ethanol, which is a chemistry job, has been becoming more efficient.
It is, definitely.
And I mean, that there's efforts being made to use less heat, water,
Yes.
chemicals.
So there's, when ethanol production first started, the efficiency, you'd get about 1.1 to 1.2 units of energy per unit you put in. And now it's up to about 1.4 to 1.5. And one of the main reasons for that is policy in California. They're pushing, if you want to sell ethanol into California, you have to have a lower carbon footprint and be more efficient. So, now, I am going to address a little bit more of this. So Morris is a kind of unique community. We have a very liberal leaning university and a very conservative farm community. And so this is one area one reason why I brought up the biogas plant and the E85 is that these are areas that we can agree on. And so that's one of the main points about working in a local community. Try to take the partisanship out of it and say, we want to improve our community. That's something that we can all agree on. How many of you don't want to improve your community that you live in? Okay. And so, there's some give and take on both sides to make that work out. Here's the group that gathered to talk about these goals. And so here's a part of our strategic plan was to have Morris be nationally recognized as an innovation leader in energy transportation, waste reduction, and recycling. And just what I said, we hope to drive a more robust and vibrant economy with our agriculture and manufacturing sectors, creating new businesses, jobs, and wealth for our community. And we'll become more economically and environmentally resilient. And we hope to achieve this vision by producing all energy locally, provide greater opportunities for local ownership, inspiring new conservation ethic for saving energy and waste and reducing waste, develop innovative educational programs, become a destination for those that want to learn. When I was growing up, the ditches were full of garbage. It just seemed that way to me. And all of a sudden, started seeing these blue signs pop up. This ditch is cleaned by the Dunlop family. And this ditch is cleaned by the Stevens County 4-H. And I thought that was, in retrospect, that was a great idea. Because you got kids and families out picking up the waste in the ditch. And it wasn't only providing community service, it was teaching the children that, hey, this is a lot of work. And it looks a lot nicer if it's kept clean. Many of the things that we're talking about for Morris Model are just that. They're just simple things that we can do to develop a new culture in our community. So the big goals: produce 80% of the energy consumed in the county by 2030, reduce energy consumption 30% by 2030, and no landfilling of waste generated within the county by 2025. I think that one probably is the one that gets the biggest eyes when I say that. And that's probably why the county is still a little hesitant about taking the step, because they're in charge of the waste. So a little bit of the demographics of Stevens County. In Morris, there's 5,300 people, roughly 2,000 households. The whole county has roughly 9,500 people, 3,500 households. We use about $95 million a year of energy in the county for on the farm. And by the way, this is some of the work that we did prior to our strategic plan. The idea was, if we don't know how much energy we're consuming, how are we going to know if we're making progress? So about $15 million a year in diesel, $37 million a year in electricity costs, $14 million a year in propane. Total cost of energy consumed in nitrogen fertilizer production, about $30 million a year. And then if you add on the energy for the city of Morris, which is about $17.5 million. So, roughly $112 million a year is spent on energy just in our little county with 9,500 people. And we do export ethanol, so you can, it is energy intensive, so you can take some of that out, but it's still a significant amount of money. And so we're trying to keep 80% of those dollars in our county. When Morse Model first began, we had other guests from the university come out, and one was Dr. Sabina Engel from the Climate Smart Municipality program and the Institute in the Environment. And she was inspired to develop this partnership with Germany, state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And so Morris is one of 6 communities now, it used to be 5, but 6 communities in Minnesota that are partnering with communities in Germany in this, and we're actually learning quite a bit. We've signed our second climate protection partnership agreement with the city of Seerbeck, Germany, and it's a perpetual agreement. Now, it used to run for 3 years, and it seemed to be working out very well for us, so we just said, why put an end date on it?
Right.
Yes.
What does that agreement require or provide for?
Provides for sharing ideas and helping each community, our partner community, achieve their goals. For example, the energy technical director for Seerbeck comes to Morris about 4 times a year now. We have a delegation that goes there. They have a delegation that comes here once a year. And so I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you some of what we do. Yes?
Are you prohibited from working with any other European countries with your agreement?
No. Nope. It's, in fact, Seerbeck has a partnership agreement with Fukushima, Japan, and they would like to pull us into that as well. And that's, I talked about a camp. They actually have a grant to fund 10 students from our Morris High School to go to Seerbeck for a renewable energy camp, and they're bringing 10 students from Fukushima, Japan, trying to get the young people together. And so I think that's going to be a great opportunity for our students, and the cost for our students is going to be $300. So for a couple-week trip to Germany. So Seerbeck is much like Morris, a small agricultural community in northwest Germany. They won the first European Energy Prize. They won €1 million for their work. They produce over 400% of their energy consumed within the city. And much of that is locally owned, by the way. That's very unique from what we have here. Large-scale wind, solar PV, biogas, biomass, local ownership. And I believe they've hit the 200,000 mark for tourism in their community as well. For a small community, that's very significant. Here's their biggest project. They were able to purchase a ammunition depot from the German army that was just outside town. They put solar panels on the bunkers, and then these wind turbines are locally owned and are by private people as well as local companies. And then they have 2 biogas plants. One is a composting facility where they bring in their organic composting. Typically, composting is 30 to 40% of the refuse stream. So right away, they're reducing their refuse stream, considerably. And they have the same rule, by the way. They can't landfill any waste in Germany. And then here is another biogas plant where the local farmers own it, and they bring their manure as well as corn silage to that plant to have digested. And then they sell the electricity. When we go there, we see technologies, cutting edge technologies. This is an electric bus with a fast charger. The bus pulls up and is charged in about 5 minutes time. It's amazing how fast they can charge that bus. And so they have a bus probably waiting back here, and they just make their route and come back and charge. And this is more common now. We have electric vehicles and charging stations, but when we first started going there, it was pretty new to us. Here's their compost site and recycling center. You can see it's in the background here. But this is what we're interested in now. We're talking about how do you recycle and handle organics in a rural area where you don't have the volume that you would here in the Twin Cities, and it's a challenging problem. They come here. We meet with our Local policymakers, here's our one senator, Senator Westrom, Senator Engelbretson, talk about, these are Republican legislators, by the way, so we're talking about renewable energy, waste recycling, climate protection. We go to our local utilities, Runestone Electric, Great River Energy, one of the REAs in our area. And today we had a guest from North Rhine-Westphalia come and speak with Otter Tail Power, and it's actually speaking in Morris tonight about the future of energy. So it's kind of helpful to help spread the message. They meet with our local renewable energy owners. This is Grant County Wind. Talk about what problems they had, and we're trying to see if we can get more locally owned projects, and then meet with groups like Riverview Dairy, who have 100,000 dairy cows and are based in the Morris area. We meet with our public schools, talk to our students and our superintendent and administration. And I mentioned the energy technical director from Sarebec is coming to Morris now 4 times a year. In Sarebec, they have an energy experience path. And so one of his projects that he's working on with us is energy experience paths in the Morris community, downtown Morris and at the university and a couple others. So when they come here, they see our technology and what we're working on. One is the UMM biomass gasification system. We use corn cobs. Now I'm using we as the University of Minnesota. Use corn cobs and gasify corn cobs. So when I say cobs, take the grain off. You have the cob. The stalk is not included in this. We've tried corn stover with the stalk. Doesn't work very well for gasification. Cobs works much better. It removes very little nutrients from the soil. It can be piled and stay good for quite a while without being covered or anything. Here's the loading dock for that. They see our solar PV systems. We have a small system here with a tracker on. This is a 10K solar, 30 kW solar PV system at UMM. We have solar thermal systems at UMM. This is a flat plate technology. Solar Skies is the brand, and this provides heat for the pool, both Olympic and public pool and a regional fitness center at the UMM campus. They look at our Green Prairie Learning and Living residence halls. This is a LEED Platinum building where the students come and they live here and live in an environment, a sustainable environment. And again, trying to change the culture. And they see our LEED Platinum Welcome Center at the Morris campus. One of the technologies here that's used in this is a chilled beam technology for cooling. When we go to Germany, by the way, one thing you notice right away is they don't have very little HVAC, no air conditioning in buildings, and it's stale. So, and it's kind of interesting hearing some of the comments from people from Minnesota across the state that go there and say, well, we're not going to do that. we got to figure out how to do that better, but we're not going to go away from HVAC systems. We've installed charging stations. These are level 2 charging stations. This is at the university campus. This is at the local grocery store. There's kind of a little, I don't know, I'd say conflict for this station here. The local judge has an EV car, and he lives nearby, so he pulls in there and charges overnight. And so the owner of the grocery store is not very happy that the judge is always taking the spot for potential customers, by the way. That's just a little inside. Cut that out, by the way.
This is on record.
There was no quid pro quo there. No quid pro quo. So City Library has a geothermal system. We'd like to put a solar PV system on here to teach people that use the local library about renewable energy. This is mentioned other pathways. There's a farm energy pathway as well out to our research and outreach center. This is our research and outreach center. farm site. We have 2 utility scale wind turbines. Actually, we share them with the University of Minnesota Morris campus. This is ours, that's theirs. We have a renewable hydrogen and ammonia pilot plant I'll talk about here in a little bit while. We have 131 kW of solar PV on site, 210 kW small wind turbines. We have 3 solar thermal systems as well. And I think I have pictures of all these. Here's our solar PV. We have a 50 kW, 10K solar system, a 30 kW array that also serves as shading for the cows. And so that's received quite a bit of attention from our agriculture community. We're actually installing, UMM is installing a 240 kW system in our pasture to do the same. And then we have a 27 and a 20 kW solar PV that serves our swine facilities. That's one of our goals, again, is to better utilize renewable energy. So in addition to these renewable energy systems, we make quite a bit of changes in the mechanical systems in our facilities. We're working on net zero energy dairy. We're using heat pumps to pull the heat from milk, which you have to cool anyway. We're storing that heat, and then we are using that heat to help sanitize the milk lines and clean the barn. Similarly, on the swine barns, I'll probably talk about this later, but we're using the solar energy to heat or cool the pigs with a chiller. Sows need 65 degree Fahrenheit temperature when they farrow. Piglets need 95. They're right next to each other. So it's a difficult environment. What mostly happens is that the sows are overheated. So we have done research looking at how we keep the sows cool and the piglets warm. And so we have a fluid or water-based system with pads that the sow can lay on and keep cool. And we provide cool drinking water to the sows. And then we use that heat to heat the piglets. Exchange it through a heat exchanger, send it to the piglets. And so we're basically doing what Mother Nature probably intended, but in a very controlled environment. This is our solar Backway Tube solar PV system, or solar thermal system, excuse me. This provides space heat and space cooling for our office building. And the interesting part about this is the cooling. The idea is that if you're going to put in a solar thermal system, you want to use it. You don't want to just use it in the wintertime. And so we put a chiller in, and that was kind of unique, and it's worked well for our facility. It's not for a home unless you have a very large home. It's for a manufacturing facility or larger business. But those evacuated tube systems, and solar thermal systems in general, they produce a lot of heat. So if you have a hotel with a pool or something like that where you need a lot of heat, this would be a good option. Here's another look at our evacuated tube system. In fact, they were producing so much heat, we had to put radiator fins in the back of them to dissipate some of it because we couldn't use it all. Here's the solar cooling pads I was talking about in the system that we use to drive that. This is our net zero energy dairy parlor. And we don't have a U-shaped room, by the way. it's a rectangular room. Just wanted to give you an idea of what components are in there. This is the storage tank for the hot water. We have 2 tankless water heaters, and we have a heat pump, heat exchangers, and we have a storage tank for a solar thermal system that's also connected to that. Again, here's the solar shade system that also provides electricity to drive a couple electric Polaris Rangers that are used obviously in our farm and in our pastures, bring the cows in. We have 250 milking cows, so we have to bring cows in twice a day. And then we also have a fast charger to charge a electric Bolt car at our site.
Do you have a battery pack for this?
Not for this one, not yet. Yep, we'd like to have a battery pack, and I could talk a little bit about that here in a bit. Here's the fast charger. This is Professor Christoph Vetter, by the way, partner with Zerbeck, Germany. Here's an electric Ranger, our Bolt as well. By the way, this is our Senator Tory Westrom. He's blind, and I took him for a ride in that. Actually, he took me for a ride in it, so that was kind of a unique experience, by the way. So he often jokes when he comes, I just drove here or something like that, and so I've actually ridden with him. He's been driving. But here's our renewable hydrogen and ammonia pilot plants. So anhydrous ammonia is used for nitrogen fertilizer for corn production, and it's the second most transported chemical in the world. We have considerable infrastructure across the Midwest for anhydrous ammonia. If you're going to produce other forms of nitrogen fertilizer, it starts with anhydrous ammonia. This is a 100-year-old process, over 100 years old. This process is called the Haber-Bosch process. Fritz Haber and Karl Bosch both won the Nobel Prize for chemistry for this. Legacy, probably one of the top 5 innovations of all time. Without this process, half the population in the world would starve. And probably half your nitrogen, or half your body's probably made from this process, by the way. It was started with hydroelectric power. It became easier to produce hydrogen, which is the core component of anhydrous ammonia, with natural gas, steam methane reforming of natural gas. It's a very carbon intense process. And so now this was the first project in the world to take wind energy and produce anhydrous ammonia. So we're very proud of this process, and the only bad thing about it is it's not economical. Yes?
Does that lend itself to hydrogen cars? Does that lend itself to?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's one way to
Exactly.
create a car without,
Yep.
fuel. I mean, that's one fuel. So have you tried, do you have any vehicles that are?
Yes, we do. We have 2 hydrogen vehicles, UTVs, that were donated to us by Toro. And I'd love to drive a hydrogen car. We have a hydrogen engine genset. So anhydrous is made by taking hydrogen, electrolyzing water, pulling nitrogen from the air, combining them under high pressure and high temperature to form NH3. And so the other aspect about anhydrous ammonia is that the Department of Energy and others across the world view it as a good energy carrier. And there's challenges with hydrogen. It's difficult to store, difficult to transport. Anhydrous ammonia, again, is the second most transported chemical in the world. I mean, there's some issues with anhydrous ammonia. It's an inhalation hazard, but farmers in general are accustomed to working with it. But we're working on using anhydrous ammonia and hydrogen as energy storage. And this is a project that I'm working on with the UMM campus. They have interest in flow batteries and other battery technology. We are already producing hydrogen and anhydrous ammonia. We'd like to do more work using gensets and fuel cells to store wind energy, basically, for later use, and then also do this with anhydrous ammonia. And nice thing about anhydrous ammonia is flexible. You can use for fertilizer, transportation fuel, thermal energy, green chemicals, so there's a lot of flexibility there. And this is kind of our concept that we take wind power, produce anhydrous ammonia, you can use it for fertilizer, store energy, use it for transportation fuel. This is work from our chemical engineering departments, from Dr. Perdomus Deatidis and his grad student, Matt Pallas, looking at the cost of storing energy. And what they found is that, battery storage is very expensive. 24.9 cents per kilowatt hour if you mix it with wind energy. Now, if you use hydrogen alone, you can get it down significantly to 11 cents, and this is with hydrogen storage and electrolysis. If you just do ammonia alone, you get it down even further. But if you use a combination of hydrogen and ammonia, you can get it down to 9.4 cents. Now, some people ask about battery storage. Now, batteries were included in this model, but they didn't make it into the cost. Ultimately, it was cheaper not to have batteries just use wind energy, which is this white bar, gray bar, and ammonia, or hydrogen and ammonia. So a lot of talk around the world about using anhydrous ammonia now as energy storage. Japan is moving very quickly in that direction. $300 million worth of research. The United States, right now, about $30 million worth of research in this area, and they want to do a demonstration project soon. I'll talk about that here. Here's how anhydrous ammonia is used for fertilizer. It's stored in local cooperatives, taken out to the field in nurse tanks. So we do quite a bit of life cycle assessment. We audit energy consumption in crop production, livestock production. This is fossil energy consumption in corn production, to get to your comment. In our case, 36.42% of the fossil energy is due to nitrogen fertilizer. But roughly 42% is due to grain drying, and about 14% is field work, tractor, diesel fuel consumption. So if we're able to use anhydrous ammonia to take out those, we have potential to reduce fossil energy use over 90% in corn production. So I think that's very transformative. Now, how are we going to do that? We were working with Will Northrup in mechanical engineering at Minneapolis campus on an integrated thermal reactor on a diesel genset. So we're able to use up to 50% in green anhydrous ammonia in a regular diesel genset. So you just put this on and you can run anhydrous ammonia in it. And we actually did that this summer. Here's the John Deere tractor that we are doing that with even today.
How is the power density of that anhydrous tank versus a similar diesel-sized tank?
It's less than a diesel tank.
Like
But-
not 50% or?
No, I'd be giving you a guess. I can get back to you on that, but it is less, but I don't know the exact amount. But it's probably not 50%.
What does it do on the engine metals, for performance?
Could you say it louder?
What does it do on the engine metals for performance and durability?
But that's a very good question,
Does it
because
tear them up on the inside or not?
it could eventually, but
Is the
anhydrous ammonia
limitations
is caustic, basically, so
Yeah.
it can do some damage. That's a very good question, though, because utilities ask that same question, and it's a issue that could be designed around. Hydrogen is very similar. Hydrogen will penetrate steels like that as well. So here's our next project is that we're started working on in July, is to convert our grain dryer to run on renewable anhydrous ammonia. And so I'm getting to that, taking out the tractor, the grain drying, and the fertilizer. Now, Doug asked me to talk about some new wind and solar projects that we're working on. This is actually today, this morning, 240 kW solar installation that's going on right at the front door of the UMM campus. It's in the Research and Outreach Center pasture, even though it's the UMM campus's solar array. It's designed also so the cows can use it for shade. That's one of the nice things, is you get multiple benefits out of this system. And it's funded through an Otter Tail Power POP program, which is a public program where they cover roughly a third of the costs of installation.
Is that a single pole tracking system?
No, it's not a tracking system. It's just a fixed array. Right now, the trackers, they're not, in general, they're not cost effective. You'd be better off spending the money and putting more arrays, more panels up. Doug also asked me to talk a little bit about policy. That's kind of a sticky subject for someone from the university. And I mentioned the university, or Morris model, has tried to remain nonpartisan. Been saying, talking to a liberal, I guess I farm also, so I'm kind of caught in the middle. But have farmers that are conservative, universities that are liberal, and saying, hey, we're all in this together. Let's forget about what's happening outside of Morris from a political standpoint. Let's focus on what we can do. And, again, we can all agree we want a strong, vibrant community. Let's see what we can do together to make that happen. There are some barriers. We have tariffs for interconnecting renewable energy systems on farms. And I'm not knocking the utilities for this, but they've come up with a tariff based on their costs. But I don't think they've taken in the full value of solar under their system. And I don't mind them charging for their costs. I just want farmers to get compensated fairly for what they're getting in return. And I don't think that's entering the equation yet. And then, money's always getting the capital. Typically in rural areas, there's probably more money there than what you think. If there's a pathway where farmers and local people can see that they can make a reasonable return and participate in this, that they're going to do it. The money's going to be there. So in order for that to happen, though, we need better policy and support for local ownership opportunities. And that, you may have heard of seabed in years past. That went away. A lot of the local opportunities, ethanol is probably the best model to date of local ownership opportunities. There's some different utilities. XL has some good programs for that. But when you get out in the rural areas, the utilities are more conservative. They have more area to cover with fewer customers. And so in conclusion, my recommendation, if you want to do this in your own community, educate at all levels. Set local goals, build community support, work together to provide technical and financial framework for successful projects, and then lead the way. So thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'll be happy to answer some questions. Yep.
Mike, we would like to invite, I'm assuming, the Morris Cougars.
Yep, Morris Cougars.
To join the Solar Boat Regatta. You guys could help them along. And plus, there is an intercollegiate league called the Solar Splash, and they Springfield, Ohio in June. So if you want to use us as a place to practice and then go down there and show those people below the south, or the Mason-Dixon line, south of Mason-Dixon line, how to do it.
Okay.
You'd be the only northern
I'll bring that up. Again, I'm not part of UMM. I would probably associate with the Gophers, but I will talk to people at UMM about that.
Can you expand on the biodigesters?
Okay, so there's two.
Sorry, go ahead and repeat it. Biomass biodigesters, they wanted it longer.
Okay. Yeah, so just so we're not confused, there's the digesters, like you see at a dairy. They'll digest in a biological process, digest the material, the carbon dioxide, or the carbon, and you'll form methane. And it's kind of a dirty methane, and that's what the biogas upgrade plant is proposed to do. It'll remove the hydrogen sulfide and clean up some of the other elements to make it spec natural gas, so you can inject it in the gas line. Neat part about that is it goes into our local gas line, but the credits are sold into California, and so you take a fairly low value product and you get, they actually are achieving about $90 per million BTU in the California market for using it for UPS trucks and Coca-Cola trucks. And so just to put that in perspective, natural gas right now is about $4 per million BTU, and they're getting 90. So we would not be able to use, I wish we could use that gas and get the credits for it, but we can't afford that. Now, biomass gasification is taking biomass, corn stover, corn cobs, switchgrass, and heating it up in the absence or in a low air environment. And so then you're releasing the carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen, other gases. And then when that hits an oxygen environment, it combusts. And so the reason why UMM is doing that instead of just combusting biomass is because you keep some of the nasty elements in the ash stream, And so you can incorporate those back into the land, essentially, or landfill them if need be. So it's a, I guess the opposite would be if you're wanting to get a campfire going, you stoke it with air and you get to see all the sparks going up. Doing this at a really controlled environment so that you don't get that particulates going up into the atmosphere. That probably doesn't make you feel very good.
So it's controlled incineration. I mean, but you don't reap any benefit from it. You just eliminate it, correct? Or am I wrong?
You get gas.
You get gas.
You get gas.
Okay.
In the UMM's case now, it's called a close coupled system. So they're just converting it to heat, which provides heat for their district heating and cooling system. Now, there are other systems that you can capture the gas and you can make other components from that. You can make diesel fuel. That's what the Nazis did in World War II, and others around the world do it. You can make Fischer-Tropsch diesel fuel, and you can make dimethyl ether. May have heard of that from, I think one of the large European auto companies is very interested in DME for transportation fuels. So you can make other components like that.
How much improvement on the input to output ethanol would full use of ammonia change that equation? You say you're at 1.5 to 1 now. Could it get a performance ratio above 2 if that 90% reduction in fossil inputs?
I don't know if it would change that. It would make it less carbon intensive, but the 1.5 units of energy, the 1.5 units of energy would probably be about the same.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So then because your ammonia opportunity is enormous for replacing the fossil fuel derived fertilizer.
Sure.
And so then you can corn and such. So any elaboration on what the potentials and impacts on carbon reduction on the fuel and nitrogen?
Well, agriculture is, in the state of Minnesota, it's number 2 or number 3 for carbon emissions, and nationally and globally, it's right up there. And corn production is one of the culprits. So anything we can do, to make improvements in that is going to be very helpful. And as you saw, nitrogen fertilizer is roughly a third of that. So if we can just replace that. The trouble is there's no incentive, no market for it now, and it's more costly. I see your hand, so I'll come to you next. There's the Department of Energy. I didn't talk about this. The Department of Energy wants to have a $10 to $20 million renewable ammonia pilot someplace now, bringing in technologies that they've been funding. And Morris has been listed as one of the two locations that they are considering for this. And so we're working with the Research Triangle Institute, Casale, which is a global or legacy ammonia technology company. They engineer plants around the world. 26 of the last 26 ammonia plants in China was done by Casale. Nel, formerly Norsk Hydro, they're the largest electrolyzer company in the world. And so we're in good company. Hopefully we can be selected to do that demonstration. Yes.
What about,
No, go ahead. Go ahead, you're fine.
I was wondering about the piping, and if there's also some research being done on ways to carry this that's not corrosive.
I'm sure there is. It's not something that we focus on.
Seems like a major problem.
For piping of what?
Ammonia and...
Oh, well, hydrogen's the problem because hydrogen penetrates the steel itself.
That's what I mean.
Ammonia is, that it's not as much of a problem. Again, ammonia is the second most transported chemical in the world. We have tanks in
trucks and.
We have, I didn't show you this slide, but there's a refrigerated storage in Glenwood, Minnesota. 60,000 tons of anhydrous ammonia supplies the Dakotas and western Minnesota. There's another 30,000 ton refrigerated storage. We have dozens of small local cooperatives that have ammonia, and that's all regulated by the Minnesota Department of Ag. So they come out and they inspect it, and they occasionally replace tanks, but it's not as big of issue right now. I like talking about ammonia. One thing I'm going to talk about is the polar vortex. Remember that? Hope we don't have another one of those, but we almost ran out of natural gas, and I hear it from utilities all the time. They're really concerned about another polar vortex. They were that close to, not having the energy to supply to people's homes, and so what I've been saying is you have anhydrous ammonia storage all across the Midwest. A lot of it. It's not being used at that time. It's being used in the spring from April 15th to June 15th, and in the fall from October 15th to November 15th. And that's the utilities' shoulder months where they don't worry about energy supply at that point in time. So I think anhydrous ammonia is a possible route. I have to come back to him.
2 quick questions. One
Yes.
is there's just tons of engineering going on there with all those different systems that you're creating maybe for the first time for a very unique case. Is that all primarily being generated and done in the local community from the university and from the tech school or something? Or are you bringing in experts from outside?
Yeah. You can cut the camera again. What I found is that the university is very poor at engineering systems, very good at engineering new devices and things like that. So it's we use contract engineers from the Twin Cities primarily.
And then what are you doing, if at all, with the model on just the simple stuff, the energy conservation, energy management? Is everybody putting in certain kinds of light bulbs or
Absolutely.
Setting their thermostats? What's going on in that more basic energy management, energy conservation role?
As much as we can possibly do, encouraging residents and businesses to put in LEDs, more insulation. We talk quite a bit about converting to electricity, electrifying, to some extent their heat, but their hot water heaters and things like that. So it's much easier to go from wind energy and solar PV to heat than it is to have a biogas system where you're delivering a renewable biogas to a place to replace natural gas at a home level. So yeah, we're trying to do all those. We participate with our local utilities on light bulb giveaways and education events about LEDs, and the city of Morris installed new street lighting LEDs, and it's a good example because they save $6,000 a year, and which is quite a bit for a small community's budget. Yeah, I'm going to come back. I'm going to go over here. Go ahead.
Is there any potential to get farmers to switch to growing hemp for biofuel? I mean, it's so much, you don't have to use fertilizer, and I understand the potential for energy is so much greater than from corn.
Yeah, there's opportunity.
Louder, please.
Okay.
Oh, the question is there opportunity for farmers to grow hemp? And we actually have hemp plots at the Research and Outreach Center. Gets some big, people look at it, take a double take when they see them. But there's opportunity there. The comment though about fertilizer, I'll have to push back a little bit. Any production system where you're removing material, you're going to have to put fertilizer on. I mean, that's just the way it works. So, and there was a lot of talk about prairie grass for energy, but if you harvest that, you're going to have, and you want to keep harvesting that, you're going to have to put fertilizer on.
Mark, you guys have done so many amazing things, and kind of two-part question. One is how many other places around the US, is there anything like what you guys are doing? And number two, I mean, where would you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, what new things do you feel you guys will be looking at that point? And one reason I asked that, when I was out there, I remember there was a conversation about putting in an additional wind turbine and that kind of thing. So that's my question.
I don't get out much anymore because I have a 4-year-old. So believe it or not. But in California and in the West Coast, there's a lot of work on energy storage and battery technologies, and so National Renewable Energy Lab. I do think that Morris is unique in many respects because it is, small rural agriculture community, and so I think Zerbeck is probably the best example, and they're ahead of us for the most part. But we have a little bit of edge on them in some areas as well. The second part of the question, what are we going to be doing next? Just working on reducing fossil energy consumption and production in agriculture and tackling that in a lot of different areas. This ammonia, hydrogen, energy storage. Project I didn't talk about very much. It was in the Sunday paper, Star Tribune. I think it was mid-September. Cowbots. Does anybody remember seeing that story? We're working on a project with Toro and our computer science and engineering on an autonomous mower that goes out to the pastures, and we power it with solar power, and it goes out and it can mow weeds in pastures. We're taking that also to row crops, so it'll basically go through, and when the corn and soybeans, maybe hemp, are really small, go through and weed the ground, and then the next stage is to have a in-row small robot that just goes through and hunts weeds. And I listened to this capital venture guy today, and he's kind of a futurist, and he said by 2029 there basically won't be any farmers. You'll have he had some good points that that 10 years ago the biggest companies were oil companies, and now it's tech or data companies. So things happen very fast.
I'm sure your farmers are worried about there not being any bees in 20 years too. Is there anything with planting prairie plants under the, when the cows are not sitting under the PV arrays, or is that part of it at all? I've heard that.
Yes. Well, we have areas where we plant native habitat. It's part of a LCCMR project. One of my colleagues has put in pollinator habitat, not necessarily bees, but pollinators. And so, yes, I think that pollinator habitat under solar panels would be fine. We just, our lands are working lands. Yeah. We have 250 cows go out and graze, and so.
No, I approve of all that. I just wonder if anyone in Stevens County or in Morris is monitoring, the bee species.
Yeah, there are have good ecologists at the UMM campus that are very involved in that work.
So you have a dairy industry, correct?
In Stevens County?
Well,
yes.
I mean, Morris has a small dairy. I thought you said you...
Yeah, the Research and Outreach Center does.
Right, so are your people doing any research into what they feed their cows? I read an interesting article that if you feed them kelp, it reduces cow flatulence. Seriously?
Indulgent, yes.
No, I'm totally serious. So have they looked into what they feed those cows?
Yeah, we have the only organic and conventional research side-by-side dairy research herd in the nation, and so we produce certified organic milk and conventional milk, and we do quite a bit of work like that. Our dairy scientists, we feed LJ to cows. We've fed fodder to cows and calves, and the challenge from a research standpoint is monitoring the flatulence. And there are places in the U.S. that do it. And it, actually, that's a big issue. 30% of agricultural greenhouse gas comes from cows and mostly cows because of the rumination.
We got time for one more question, so.
This is more kind of an open question as to what do you see coming down on the horizon in the research that Morris is most deeply involved with that's kind of new, exciting, people haven't heard about yet?
I think I would have told you about both of those. I want to hold that back, but I think I believe that energy storage is going to be key moving forward, and that some people call this power to gas. So taking electricity and converting it to another form like we do with hydrogen and ammonia. And overall, the electrification, I think you're going to see us move away from natural gas, propane, as much as we can. We're cold climate, so we're probably going to have some of it, but you're going to see a lot more electrification across the Midwest and across the U.S. Okay?
All right,
Thank you very much.